I'm hopping back on the YouTube Live, Original Instructions School YouTube Live. And we're going to do a little talking about our upcoming TUM, Traditional Uterine Massage and Well Womb Skills Immersion. I'm super, super excited about it. And I wanted to talk about something that unfolded last time, which was really for me, a good sign that this work of healing sexual and reproductive trauma is effective and is working. I have been on this path since I was a young girl, healing my own sexual and reproductive trauma, and I've been through a lot of phases, and I'm still on that journey. It's not like I'm done. I'm still on that journey, and um, I would say that of all of the tools that have been effective, though, for healing sexual and reproductive trauma within humanity as a whole, is really bringing up the generations in a way that do no longer objectify Earth. And so I'm, in addition to being a facilitator and survivor myself, so healing the sexual and reproductive trauma myself and facilitating that for others, that space, I also am a mother, and I have 5 kids, and my oldest one is an 18-year-old male, Latino male. And for me, something that was so heartening, and that I knew, okay, this work is going somewhere and we're being effective at healing the sexual and reproductive trauma, not just for one person, but working on that, healing that tapestry for humanity as a whole, um, through seeing that my son, who was 18 at the time, was fully present with us throughout the retreat and had the knowledge, patience, wisdom, and desire to build us the sweat lodge that we actually go in with Grandmother Spider and help reweave our web of life through that. And so seeing him as a young man, a couple of decades almost of my life going into helping him, and seeing that he's not only a young man who knows how to build a sweat lodge to heal sexual trauma, knows what healing sexual trauma can look like, but also that I've been able to raise him knowing that it's not just enough to not be one of the men who's abusing. It's not just enough to not be the rapist, but in fact, you have to actually go above and beyond that. What I always tell him is, if you are the guy who's standing around and laughing at some of the misogynistic jokes, or letting some of the abusive comments slide, then you're just as bad as the abusers. And so raising him, my son, in a way, Amado, in a way that he's not only not an abuser, but also truly in love with Earth. Seeing him build that sweat lodge for us during our last traditional uterine massage training last year at age 18, again, with the knowledge to build it physically, but also knowing that he was never going to get in that sweat lodge, because the lodge we do is a grandmother spider sweat lodge specifically only for healing sexual trauma. So seeing my young son, as a young man building a lodge, spending days that he won't even reap the benefits of, that he's just fully there and actually excited about it. That was the other thing. There was no bargaining to get him to do it. There was no um, incentive other than that he just wanted to help build that space and protect that space for us women to go into the Grandmother Spider Sweat Lodge and heal our sexual trauma. And there was a young lady in the lodge and who was healing as well, and in his generation, he was 18 and she was about 21, and for me to watch them and see her seeing a young man in her same generation, who again not only is not an abuser, but we need to take it like way beyond that point, a young man in her generation who respects Earth and respects healing the sexual and reproductive trauma to a degree that he will excitedly spend, enthusiastically spend days building us a lodge, was to me just a huge sign that our work is very effective. And beyond that, it made me reflect on the fact that in order to actually tackle and mend and heal and repair this big collective wound of sexual and reproductive trauma that certainly all genders can experience, and I'm using male and female in this live, but certainly all genders can have the sexual and reproductive trauma. But it's really a bigger issue that when you see agriculture appearing in human history, when you see the objectification of Earth, So whether that's through Manifest Destiny, Judeo-Christian ideologies, agriculture, capitalism, but when these types of systems are introduced into the human mind and to our reality that actually objectify Earth, that's when we see the massive uptick also and almost social acceptance of the misogyny, the objectification of sexuality of women, certainly, but disproportionately indigenous women and women of color. And that's no coincidence. It's the same thing. It's not a metaphor. It's that I need to raise these generation of young men, my son, and also the young men who are coming through, especially the white privileged young men who are going to be coming up and have their hands on power. We need to have environments for them, not just to learn how to inform consent or learn how to not be the rapey, creepy guy, but in fact to grow up with their human minds in love with Earth again. In love with Earth again as they used to be growing up, the young men, and have these rites of passage restored around our young males and all humans, but particularly young males when we're talking to ending the domestic violence and femicide and sexual violence epidemics that are across all nations. And so really providing that space, our TUM training in Cuzco, Peru that's coming up now is not only about the participants that are there for each round, but also working with the local communities, my family, the families that have lived here for generations or decades, in our case, and working together to grow up the new generations to truly fall in love with Earth together. And through that foundational relationship that each person is continuing to nurture and grow, that's where the real healing, the real mending, I guess I would say the collective mending of the sexual and reproductive trauma can occur like that. Falling in love with Earth together. That's the theme of all of our skills immersions and every day. And I hope you have a beautiful day where you fall in love with Earth together.